Sameer, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Of course, big day, made by Google. This was one of the big events of the year for you all. There's a lot happening with Gemini intelligence, with the ways that the device itself, these devices themselves are doing a lot more, and a lot kind of differently too. So you've talked about the way that the device is moving. Android is moving from an operating system to an intelligent system. What does an intelligent system do that an operating system doesn't do?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, and really appreciate the conversation. I think that from the standpoint of a operating system to an intelligence system, maybe the place to start on that is just the way that I view what we've been trying to do with computing for the last 40 years or so. And that's really try to make computing as easy for people to access and utilize, but in the spirit of have all of us learn how best the computer takes instructions. And that paradigm has just played out over a number of different interfaces. So, you have a command line interface, which is, there's a set of commands you can issue and what have you. You start with assembly language and you command line interface, and then eventually you have, graphical user interfaces, which are helpful because they broaden access and it makes it easier, but you're still taking a pointer and you're clicking on individual actions you want to take and menus and all these things that are supposed to be organized, but they're really just organizing things so that humans can better get to the functions that the computer understands. And I think all of that needed to be managed by a system and from a resource standpoint and what have you. And we call that the operating system. Right?
Yeah.
If you think about where computing is going, it's really more of flipping the paradigm to actually the machine can understand your goals, your intention, and it can start to transition from taking micromanagement from you to instead you articulating like, I want to get this done. And then it translate that into a whole bunch of actions, right? Yeah. And I think that's fundamentally a different human-computer interface. It's very exciting. And I think that vision is what we call an intelligent system, And so, of course, the same, if you have the operating systems book from your computer science class still on your shelf, we still have to do all those things, managing resources and all those things. But, on top of that, there needs to be this intelligent layer, which is able to take what your goal is and translate that into all the things that you previously had to do yourself, and that's our vision. And we are starting out with that with Gemini intelligence on Android, and moving in that direction. We're launching. So we've launched a few things around that already. We'll have more coming this week.
Yeah, very good. When we talk specifically about mobile, the center of the mobile ecosystem has been the app for the past, 15 years, 20 years. In an intelligence system, the app seems to be a little less centered, and the things like the ways that you all now make what are app functions accessible more in a more kind of atomic way. So atomizing some of the functions of an app in making them available to intelligence. That's a different way of approaching it. How does that relate to kind of the way you're thinking about it and the way you're talking about, the way we access these systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd answer it with two different things. First, I think the app is at like a bit of like a meta level. The app is a set of functionality packaged by a particular provider of those services, right? And so I think if fundamentally we say, okay, is the app going away? If we mean sets of services from folks, that have a brand that you interface with, I don't think that's going away. I don't think it went away when we moved from mobile to apps. I don't think it's going away now. Yeah, the form of it could change in some regards, but the second part I wanted to say is we should define what from the standpoint of what people are actually doing on their phone. So if you look at time spent, on a phone, a lot of it is spent doing things that I don't think we want agents to really replace. Like a lot of it is playing games. A lot of it is watching a movie in YouTube or looking at TikTok or Instagram. And that's over 70% of time spent on phones. So
Just for those sets of things.
with all those things that are consumption oriented, playing games, interacting, messaging with your friends, like that's the majority of the time we spent. So actually when people talk about apps going away and all this, I like to just ground it in this notion of a 2x2, if you will.
Okay.
And one dimension of it is experience, and the other dimension is how transactional the app is, right? And if you think about the dimension of experience, like the higher the experience it is in the app and the lower the transactionality of the app is, the more it's probably not going to be affected by all of this change, if you see what I mean. Because we don't really want maybe we should have our agents doing some of these things for us instead, but like we kind of want to watch a lot of these things on YouTube, and we want to learn. I watched one of your videos the other day. I was like, I don't want an agent to do that for me. I want to do that, right? That's why it's there, right? And so I think that, but if we want to talk about, when you ask that question about apps, I think it's really referring to the things that are high on a transactions scale and then low on the experience scale, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I think there's a possibility there that those companies will say, hey, I want to have more of my functionality be available to agents and to systems that can help automate these things, because it actually increases the pie of things that can be done. If I'm wearing my intelligent glasses or I'm in a car and I want to order something, reorder my regular from whatever, that's a transaction that I might be able to make now that previously I'm like, I can't fumble around and get it done. And so I may not do it. So I think it's actually expansionary for those folks if it's done right. And for the rest, I think it's to be determined, but I don't think it's obvious that the things that we want to consume are going to be agentified away.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. There's these interesting paradigms, and I want to acknowledge too, like it's different in different places, even regionally. So like in Asia and China, there's been more like the super app that does a lot of things for you. And more like US and Europe, it's been a lot of apps that do, we sort of have the app that we pay for things with, or, part of the OS. We have an app that helped us get Rise. We have one that we do, other things with. So the paradigms are different, but they seem to be shifting all of them seem to be shifting as we think about and we sort of play forward some of these advances and the ways things have been evolving, in the ecosystem. Today's the way people use AI in their phones is still mostly a chatbot, right? What Google's talking a lot about, and I expect others to talk more about too, is this idea of agents on the phone. You referenced it a little bit. How's that playing out in this new generation of devices, of the new generation of the OS that you all announced at Google I/O? What's the vision of agents on phones, in 2026 and 2020?
That's a great question. So I think with this comes back to how we view the intelligence system, and I think that what we would like to enable for people is a system where the chatbot interface, I think, is a good one. Will continue. People seem to vibe with it and enjoy it. But I think for long running tasks, for things that you actually may take some time to complete, you need an ability for the system to help you understand, first of all, to be able to accomplish those things for you, So, if you wanted to go do a series of actions for you that represent a thing you're trying to get done, like I need to figure out when soccer is, and then I need to make sure that we send the right messages to the right people because we got to do the carpool at this time. And that's a series of steps. And so we've started with that already with some functionality called app automation in Gemini with Gemini Intelligence. And it is this makes Gemini capable of taking a task and then launching different apps and actually navigating them and performing those kinds of things for you. It's just the beginning of that, but we view it as pointing towards a direction of these systems can help you with those kinds of things that give you more time back in your life, and that's cool. And then there comes the next question of, well, what does the user interface for that look like? Because it isn't always, even if you had a personal assistant that you were hiring and paying by the hour, that person may have questions for you.
Sure.
They may want to interact with you. They may want to say like, well, you have two choices, A or B, and did I get this right before I pay for this? Like, can you check this out?
Yeah.
And so how do you create an interface for that? And so those are all parts of like the intelligence system that we think about, and the new ways you may interact with your phone. And by the way, not just your phone, you will probably want to continue these interactions no matter what device you're on.
Cross devices.
Absolutely. And you want it to be the same personal assistant you're talking to, right? You don't want a personal assistant on your watch that's different from your phone, because you want to continue those tasks. So that's how we think about it.
You can see yourself getting really frustrated if you're like trying to coordinate a ride on your phone, and then you go sit down on your computer and you're working, and you're like, okay, now that thing that I told you earlier, can you change that to 2:00? And it doesn't know. It would get frustrating.
That would get frustrating. And I think the notion of a personal assistant would be one that has enough context about you with your permission to be able to help you with these tasks, and then be in all the places that naturally make sense, to be in. And so certainly your phone is a great interface. Your laptop may be a great interface as well. When you're on the go and driving somewhere, you want to be able to ask your car and want to have that conversation continue. So that's really an important part of the continuity that makes it feel smart and intelligent.
Is that why you went to Gemini Intelligence? Because the idea that you have a Gemini app that is in all of those spaces: desktop, car, phone, right, glasses, watch. It can extend across all of those pieces.
Gemini Intelligence for us is basically the best Gemini experience on the most advanced Android devices. And of course, the phone is an important centerpiece for all of us, but there's many other devices that that functionality should be extended to. And I think the agent and the personal assistant is one element of this. But, you were asking, hey, what is this intelligence system earlier? And I just wanted to give like a very practical example for your listeners of something we're launching this week that I think is a great example of going from this paradigm of micromanagement of the machine to one where you can be more goal oriented. And that's what we're doing with the keyboard. So we have this new microphone in the keyboard that we're launching. The internal name for it has been Rambler.
Yep.
And it's pretty exciting to me because, historically the keyboard has been an input system that was really in part designed for the machine, right? And it's not even in alphabetical order, and so from a human standpoint, you really have to learn to use this thing. People go to typing class and whatever, right?
Right.
And you're literally taking like your thoughts, and then you're like, okay, I want to break this down into what I want to say, and then I'm going to break the words down into letters. And so this is inputting into the machine and learning how to do that like to a T, right? So we of course had dictation microphones. That's not new. You press a button and you dictate, but that is still pretty micromanagey because you're literally faithfully dictating every single word. Ahs. Oh yeah, I didn't mean that. Maybe this instead. Wait. Okay. So you're really having to be careful what you dictate and then go back and edit. Rambler is different. So this is open the microphone on your keyboard, speak, ramble, if you will, do a brain dump, and it will come back to you and basically and synthesize what you meant for you to review. And I've been using it for 2 months. It's totally changed the way I use the phone. I don't speak multiple languages regularly, but for those who do, it is very common for people to speak out loud and go between language
Parts of different languages.
Yeah, it's very common in many parts of the world where you go back and forth. Rambler can handle that. It supports over 100 different languages, and it can do it all in one language for you, or it can have both languages in there. So I think it's really a great example of the keyboard becoming intelligent, and that's one component of overall redesigning an operating system to be an intelligent system.
You're reading my mind like an AI agent now, because that was where I was going to go next. We talked. You brought up this example of like, say I have like this afternoon, I want to go to, say this afternoon, I have to do a pickup, like a carpool pickup at 1:00 for soccer or something. Yeah. And so I just wanted, I want an AGI, because so there's a number of tasks for me to do. Look up the calendar, see the people who are in it, perhaps text them, coordinate where to meet, things like that. So the dream with this is to be able to send to the agent, hey, send a calendar invite for 1:00. with the group of carpool, do the same one we did last week, right? The same group of people and all that. And what I was going to say is like, but you don't really want to type all of that in. It would be much nicer if you could just say it
Yeah.
and do it in an unstructured way, because often our thoughts are often unstructured, right? Like we don't have to think about it sequentially.
Yeah.
And then have the AI, AI is good at providing structure, right? Unstructured things.
Yeah.
Let the AI, when that's what Rambler is doing, it's providing the structure, and then it's going and carrying out the steps.
Absolutely. And I think that the great thing about these multimodal models is, we express ourselves in lots of different ways. Typing or text input is one way, but, we like to just talk. And there's a reason why I think this notion of a brain dump has been a human thing for like a very long time. Like I think sometimes you just need to say to somebody else like everything you're thinking, and just the act of saying it helps in some ways by the end, not during, but by the end, clarify what you really meant. Because a lot of these systems are, they can goal seek, but what is your goal exactly? Like, what are you exactly saying you want to do? And I think we found this with coding too, with these systems, right? And so actually, I've observed a lot of people who are using these systems for coding with a boom mic now. And they're, and I think there is something to saying it out loud and what have you, but just dictating that may not, at the end, you're like, okay, wait, this is like a mess.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, take the gist of it, try to understand, synthesize it, give it back to me. It's like, yeah, okay, that's what I meant. And so I think that's a big step. We're super excited about that launching on Pixel 11. I think it's, I can't wait for people's reaction to it. I think, it's been a really anticipated feature. I get a lot of emails about it. When is this coming? So, we're excited to see that pull out.
Yeah. I've been one of those email and people Google about like, can I get a Rambler? Can I get a look at it? Because I select, because you can, if you don't know, if you haven't already, like you can sign up with the beta in Google Play Store. Like you can go to the app and ask to be in the beta of Google Gboard.
Yeah. So you need to get Gboard. And once you get Gboard and you have Pixel 11, it'll roll out. One of the cool things, of course, because it's Gboard, right? So it's any input field, right? So it's not just like in the Google apps. Right. Like anytime there's an input field, you tap and Gboard comes up, you can tap that mic and then you can just ramble into it.
A lot of people so far in 2026 have gotten excited about WhisperFlow. It has a very similar approach. So very much looking forward to that. A lot of people that I talk to in the AI ecosystem also really excited for that, because one of the challenges with a third-party tool like WhisperFlow, and there's others, as well, is that sort of it has this little bit of herky-jerky experience of like, you sort of have, sometimes you have to like go out and then go back in, right? The nice thing about it being Rambler, being in Gboard, is it's always right there. It's similar to what would have been in the past, like the microphone button. But now it can sort of take this unstructured, stuff that comes out of here to there and make it a lot better.
Gboard's been around for a while. We have so many people, we have hundreds of millions of people every week that use the dictation microphone.
Okay.
And, Gboard supports over like 140 languages around the world. So I think users of Gboard have come to expect that it, we introduced glide typing. We have the mic in so many languages. So I think they've come to expect that we're going to continue to evolve input in a big way. So I hope this is exciting to them. I hope people use it and give us a lot of feedback on it. And we've also made it such that if you don't like it for whatever reason, you can just continue.
You can use the dictation. Use dictation. You can switch before and in between. So it's just, hey, exactly. If you're really good at this, you've already changed your mental model and you're already doing it, you can keep doing it that way. I do think most people will want to use Rambler.
I hope so, but we'll see.
I will say it's the thing in Android 17 that I'm most looking forward to. It's the thing that comes up in conversations when I talk to people who are about using it, are interested in the devices or the, OS. It comes up again and again. Sameer, when we think forward, sort of these things, the models just keep getting better and better, right? The AI keeps getting better and better. We think about even just in 2026, how much, you mentioned people with boom mics, talking into their computers. I see that a lot too. In Silicon Valley, there's whole, floors of people just whispering, of programmers whispering into the computers, now. You think that you think about this idea of us being able to talk to our AI agents, for the AI agents to carry out things for us. This has the potential to really change not just the computing paradigm, but really the work paradigm, in some big ways. People so far, humans. So here's my question. So far, human beings have been judged by the work they do, right? The things they carry out. And some of that is like, how good are you? How efficient are you? How, do you put in extra hours? You go the extra mile? If these AI agents can carry out tasks for us and better and faster in many cases, which is sort of what we're seeing, does it really change what, as is a more philosophical question, what humans are, judged by? What the way we judge workers if the AI agents carry out things for them? And you think about, you run a team too, in addition to the many other things you do. Does that mean that we end up like judging or evaluating or, humans based on the dots they connect, the sort of the goals that they give AI, if AI is carrying out more of the work? Are those some of the things that you all think about if the AI continually is going to be better and better at carrying out, some of these goals for us?
It's a really good question. And I don't think it's an answered question right now in the software industry, or really, frankly, in almost any industry. I think it's still evolving. And, what I probably thought about this 6 months ago has changed to now, probably change again in 6 months. But I definitely think that these are new tools. And I definitely think there are areas where they're super useful, and there are areas where they're still not as useful as they should be. And I think that when we are looking for team members, we definitely want folks who are just like forever before this, people who are excited about and embracing the latest tools that help them be as productive as possible. Like, yeah, that's just kind of a age-old thing, right? And so we look at this as another tool. And if you come in the door and you are well-versed on it and you're ready to go and using these tools for the places where they can be used, we think that's really good. And we look for that, at the same time, we do believe that, at least I've seen in my team, that there are places where the tool set is still evolving. And so, I think the human oversight, the human in the loop component of this is totally vital, and really important. And so it's a mixture right now, but we're definitely trying to give, in our team anyway, we're trying to give people time in their job to learn these tools. So like if you've been working in one way for a long time, Google engineers are always curious. Like, you don't have to convince Google engineers to be excited to use new technology. It's like that's the nice thing about working at Google. But you still do need time, because learning something new for anyone just takes time. So we've been trying to carve out time for people to sort of get involved with this. And by the way, it's not just software engineering. Like I think product design, product management, user experience. I think all these disciplines, I've met with lots of folks across the company who are using these tools in an integrated way with their existing workflows, or creating entirely new workflows, who are coming to me. And these are my most favorite conversations, where someone says, "Hey, look at what I did.
Yeah.
Here's how I changed how we do this," and no one told them to do that. They figured that out and they're finding it really useful. I think that's super cool. So right now it's another tool. And in the future, 6 months from now, I bet we'll talk again, and who knows?
Yeah. What are some of your favorite examples of the way people are working so differently now with some of these tools and what's capable?
Well, one thing, that I think a lot of companies have done is, we have a lot of bugs that come in from external and internal sources. And I don't really know of anyone who studied computer science who was like, when I grow up, what I really want to do is bug triage. It's like, I want to do bug triage. I want to figure out if this is P2, P1, P0. A lot of folks in our team, we have like an on-call rotation, and so people take on-call rotation, and then the bugs come in and they triage and what have you. Some of our teams now have built automatic bug triage agents, and I think that the interesting thing is, the hardest part they've told me for some of that was actually not writing or not doing the prompting or writing the code around the agent to make all that happen, hooking it up to their existing systems. That part, I think they found was like they could get through that pretty quickly. It was more writing the evals to understand whether or not the bug triage agent they had created was sufficiently good to say, I don't need to have an on-call rotation for this anymore, And so that it's interesting that like writing evals and doing measurement of that kind is not necessarily a skill set. It's not necessarily something that everyone has done. And so I think that was a new skill for some of those teams to learn. And it led us to also realize that we probably need to package up how to do that properly and make that like something that we push out to folks as like, if you want to build agents to do stuff, then you should learn how to measure whether or not they're good enough, as a skill that people should have. And so I thought that was really cool. Of course, nowadays when I'm going to a lot of our product review meetings, we always say in the Android team that demos are better than decks. And so it's really cool to see people who are not software engineers come in and present demos, prototypes of ideas that they have for what they want to do. And so, UX team the other day that came in, and instead of user design team that came in the other day, and instead of being like, here are mocks for how we think this should work, they had like a functional prototype that you could play with, and I mean, it's not something that you would ship, but like it allowed you to experience the interactions, it allowed you to experience the animation, it allowed you to feel what this thing would be like. And we could have a much richer conversation always, right, with a prototype than what you have with with mock-ups. And they did that, zero engineering. Usually sometimes we have long lag time, because we will want to prototype something, right? So it's shortened that lag time, and we can do like 5 or 6 more prototypes in that same amount of time. So these are some things that I think a lot of companies are finding these kinds of wins super helpful for us.
That's amazing. So it's sort of like in movies, you could pre-visualize or storyboard before you did it. And those things never would make it into the movie because it was like a cartoon drawing of something. But the full vision of what you're talking about was much more accessible to everybody else.
Totally now. Yeah.
So now you can have product managers or project managers who could vibe code and say, here's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I grew up in Google as a product manager, and I was an engineer before that. But I grew up as a product manager in Google, and I think that right now is a really interesting time to be a product manager, because you're able to express your ability to express where you think the experience should go, I think has been dramatically multiplied by these tools that are available. You don't just have to write quote unquote the PRD. First of all, you can have help writing the PRD, synthesize tons of information way more quickly. And you can prototype, and, we've even had, we've had a couple of product managers who now they're submitting CLs, and still by our engineers. But like, that's really cool. That's really cool to have people be able to do that. I think for them, for product management, I think it's like an empowering thing, and it's exciting to see.
What's the best thing an AI agent has done for you?
Oh goodness. The best thing. Okay, well, there's several things. One thing I did with Gemini Spark recently, that was really helpful. And this is a small thing, so I don't know that it's the best thing, but I just wanted
an interesting thing.
Okay. I travel a lot for work, and I don't, and as a result, like sometimes when I book stuff, like I also cancel a lot of flights. And I've got like a ton of emails. Airlines send you these emails with your travel credit, and like I have no idea. Like Southwest, I have so much travel credit, I don't even know. Sometimes, and I'm booking flights, and I'm like, I think I have United credit, but I don't really remember.
Sure.
So I asked Spark to go through all my email and find all the credits, and then go to the websites for the airlines and validate that those are actually credits that are still usable, how much is there, and when it expires. And it made me a spreadsheet of that. And I was, that's pretty cool. I'm going to use this. It's a small thing, but like doing that probably would have taken me, I don't know how long,
20, 30 minutes,
long enough that I wasn't going to do it. I haven't done it yet anyway, empirically. So I think that was That was super helpful.
This is a good, this brings up a good point, because in order to do that, it had to have the logins to Southwest and United and all of that.
In this case, it didn't, because they have a web page for each of them where you can like go and enter your credit and a PIN that it gives you. So in this case, it didn't, but I know where you're going.
Okay. So agents thrive when they have more context. They can do things for you when they can do things on your behalf. And so how do you, as Google, how do you convince users to sort of give the layers of context that are going to allow the agents to do so much for you?
It's a really good question. I think that, it's really important to start in ways that build trust and have the right transparency and control in place. So we talked about app automation before.
Yep.
So we designed a few things. So in the Android operating system, now we built something which is effectively a virtual window. So what happens is when you ask Gemini, for example, to go and do app automation on something, and let's take an example so we can talk through it.
Yeah.
I use this example of something I did back around the Memorial Day when we were having a barbecue. I made a list of people who come to the barbecue, how many people were in their party, whether or not they were vegan, vegetarian, or eat everything. And then I asked Gemini to take this list and go to Instacart and put together a set of things in my cart that I would need for the barbecue, and all the burgers and everything else, right? So it looked at the list, it analyzed it, and it starts doing that in Instacart. So let's walk through how that happens.
Okay.
So Gemini takes that, understands what you're trying to do. It understands that you've given it permission to start this automation task in an app called Instacart. So then it is able to now ask Android if it can launch Instacart in this virtual window. Okay, so it launches in a virtual window, which means that you can observe what the agent is doing at all times, but you can also minimize that so that it just shows up in your status bar, and you don't have to watch it all the time, but at any time you can tap on it and it expands and you can see exactly what the agent's doing. So nothing's hidden from you. But if you want to use your phone to do other things, because the phone is kind of a single user device, it's not really meant for two people to be using it at the same time. So then it can minimize, so you can browse your email or browse the web or whatever at the same time. And we've also made it so that the agent does not complete transactions for you today. So for example, by the way, if it has questions, it'll ask you along the way, or prompt you. But then when it gets to the transaction screen in the cart, it calls you back. And it's like, can you look at this and review it? And that's not because we couldn't make it push that button, but we think that's an important safety measure right now to help people build confidence and to give us the feedback as well. And so I think that, and finally, the agent is sandbox. So it is not able to, because you've only said Instacart, it's not able to go to 4 other apps either, or access the rest of the system. So those are all things that we've done to help provide transparency and control around this. And that will hopefully build confidence with people over time. And we're getting a lot of good feedback around it. And over time, we believe that there needs to be a more robust, even in this, permissions model around how you allow agents to do things. And we'll build that out over time with developer and user feedback.
That's good to hear, that last part, because we've already seen, that these models, they are necessarily creative, right? If they can't do something, if they went to Instacart and they're like, oh, it won't let me do this one thing, like an agent will say, well, what else could I do? Right. And it'll that's where it leads to sort of sometimes jumping the bounds of what it's in. So by having it in a sandbox, by having this vision of we're going to create a permissions framework around agents so that they aren't going to do things you don't want it to do. They're only going to do the things that you want it to do.
Yep. These things are easier said than done. I think that we have, you always have a trade-off in the creation of these sandboxes between safety and control and in some cases utility.
Sure.
And you have to find the balance point. We've dialed it to a point where we want people to feel safe, because all this is very new. And over time, I think people will say, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And I think that's the moment where you start to say, okay, let's introduce additional capabilities, but with the right controls around those. And you kind of build from there. Now, of course, there are other instances, and this is like, you have to, when we think about it this way, like you have the phone, there's 3 billion devices around the world, and plus all the other kinds of devices. So, we have to be responsible about this and do it that way. I think there's a lot of experimentation we do internally, where we are trying all kinds of stuff and new form factors and new types of devices and taking some of the safeties off and all that. So I want to balance with, like, when you roll things out at large scale, you want to be responsible and you want to do it in the right way. That doesn't mean internally you're not trying new things and innovating. And I think balancing both of those two things is real.
And there's some user education that goes along with that. If an agent can't do something and then you prompt user, would you like it to be able to do this? Then you sort of are learning, oh, there are these sort of controls in place. Am I comfortable removing or reducing sort of the level of those in order for it to do more things? So that's part of the journey that we sort of have to go on in the time ahead.
I think that's right.
Okay.
I think that's exactly right.
Okay. How about you all have other devices as well? You've re-entered the smart glasses space, so to speak. There was Google Glass, a decade ago, which was, it's really interesting to feel how far ahead of its time it was, at this point. Really interesting. What does that look like as you start to think about devices and the devices going beyond the phone? The watch can do some things. The glasses now can do some things. What does Gemini intelligence look like? What does sort of the intelligent system kind of look like as it spreads beyond the phone, unless people do things that not only, they are maybe better or different, but in some cases, really, they have never experienced yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that some of these form factors lend themselves to this kind of different human computer interaction even more than the phone. I think the phone has become this we're all very experienced and we're highly tuned to, like, use our phones to do stuff pretty quickly. And so, yes, there are, like, more multi-step tasks and what have you that you might want to do, but, like, call me a car, I can do that pretty quickly in my Uber or Lyft app, and so the bar is really high for these things to be super useful there. Now, if you take a watch where you're on a run, or you take a pair of glasses where you don't have your phone out and you don't have a screen, or you're in a car where you really shouldn't be using your hands to do anything except drive, I think this new voice understanding mode where you can get things done in an automated way, I think is going to be far more appreciated quickly. If you're on your glasses and you walking down the street and you can say, hey, order my regular from whatever cafe, is a mile away. And it can do that for you. It's pretty useful.
Yeah.
You don't have to take out your phone from your pocket or your purse, and you just got to continue on with your day. Same thing in the car. If you're like, hey, could you put together a quick, like, audio overview of what I need to know for this meeting I'm about to have when I reach work in 15 minutes, and it does that for you. And, like, you could probably figure out how to do that. Pull up Notebook LM, fumble around, do things where on your phone, but, like, you shouldn't be doing that while you're driving. Yeah. And so I think Gemini intelligence is of course about the phone, but it's about so many more of these devices and how they all work better together. And I think that really helps differentiate the Android experience, in the future. I think that's what we want it to be about. And one of the things I did want to mention around this is how we talk about it with consumers. Maybe that's just like a briefly interesting thing. I think the word AI has created a lot of feelings. They say, yeah, right. And if you dissect that, there's so much going on there, which we don't have time to talk about. But I think most importantly is, for folks who are in technology and I study computer science, and so I'm really excited about what's going on with the technology and can talk about that. kind of endlessly. I think for folks who aren't really as interested in that, maybe they have other passions in their life besides that, I think the word actually is a little scary, more than a little scary.
Sure.
I think it kind of turns some folks off. So one of the things that we're really trying to do is just talk about the benefits of the features. What does this do for you in your life that actually will help you? So it's
Even if you never mentioned the word AI.
actually, I try not to, because I find that when I'm talking to folks who are not in the technology space, it helps them really understand why I'm excited more than if I start using the word AI.
Yeah, because here we go with the AI.
And it's so when I talk about, things like circled search on Android, or, I talk about what Gemini can do with automation, or I talk about how, like, you saw that necktie on that person, or that purse that you wanted, you can just circle it. You could never describe that thing to Google, because it's like, how do I describe this?
Yeah.
This thing, but now it's like it can show you where to buy it. And people are like, oh, that's really cool. Tons of AI behind the scenes, right? That's machine vision and everything. And same thing with automation. When people hear some of the examples and how it can save them time, they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Now you're talking. So I just wanted to share that as well. That's kind of like a bit of all of this. You mentioned Google Glass, right? A lot of all this is like, we are human, right? So like, we want it to be socially awesome and also useful, right? It can't just be one or the other, right? To truly be a hit technology product.
So more human centric than technology centric.
I think so. I mean, with glasses, for example, one of the key learnings, obvious in retrospect, is like, it has to be something that you really, really want to wear.
Yeah.
It has to be something that, like, a good test is like, if you forgot to charge it and the battery was dead, would it still be something you would want to wear? And if you're like, yeah, I like it, it's nice, people compliment me when I have it on.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's a good quote. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere, now make it useful also, not just, a fashion accessory. So I think that's a lot of what I think we have to get right.
Google does so many things. Like, we've talked about a bunch of these things. That is this great benefit, because what we talked to earlier, that, you don't have a one experience on your computer, a different experience on your car, a different experience on your watch. If you were, and in the AI world, it gets super frustrating if you're like, you talked about something with your AI earlier or set a task, and then now you sort of want it to adjust that, or you want to do the next step, and it doesn't have context for that, or it doesn't know. The flip side of the coin is, because you're Google and you do so many things, it can get pretty confusing to users, like the branding of different things, the names of different things. How do you navigate that? I'm sure it's one that you're thinking about, because you have a whole portfolio you look at. You and your team are trying to connect the dots across these experiences. How do you think about that in terms of the brand and how the user interfaces with these different pieces, so the user, in some cases, doesn't have to think about it, but then also doesn't get confused about it, of like, oh, there's Rambler here, but it's dictation here. Is that the same thing? Does it know me? That, I assume, is something that you have to think about a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, we want to try to make this as simple as possible. Of course, we are coming up with new things all the time. And so, we do have a user base that wants to try new things, and they want to refer to it as a thing. And so, but as you scale these things, you need to keep it simple. And so we try to manage both of those two things. We often, I think, look at it from the standpoint of, if we are going to explain this in 30 seconds to somebody in an elevator, how would you do that? And there are definitely instances where internally, before we are going to launch something, well, much before we're going to launch something, we experience it like, okay, actually, that was a little too complicated. And we try to simplify, and we don't always get it right, but we take a lot of feedback and we iterate on that and try to make it easier. I think one of the things that I think is a positive about Android is it is an open system, and there are a lot of OEMs and software developers and what have you that are building like really cool stuff. And so our users do have a little bit of an expectation that, on Android, you always see the future first. And so they do come there looking for that feature. So we do talk about some of those things and point people to some of those things. But I think when we do that, we're also talking hopefully to a particular audience that really appreciates that. And then when we look at like the broader audience, if you will, I think it's really important for things to be simple, straightforward, and very, very, very easy to name and understand.
With the Pixel 11, if people start calling it the first agentic phone, are you happy with that?
Oh boy. I mean, I think if they're talking about it that way, that means we're doing probably something very interesting. So that's good. There's so much in these words now. I don't even know.
Sure.
But what I would say about the Pixel 11 is that it really embodies what it's the tip of the spear for where we think, the Android experience is going. And if people are excited about it, and they think that we're doing interesting things there, then I'm really happy with for what that means for Android.
What's the thing that you can't wait for it to do? That we talk about agents a lot and the agentic things, and there are a lot of things it can do that it couldn't do 12 months ago, maybe 6 months ago. What's the thing that you can't wait for, the phone?
There's so many things we're working on. One that I can share is I do think that, again, I'm going to make it very practical.
Okay.
This is not going to be something that, changes the world, but I'm just going to make it practical because I think it's not going to be far off. This is like next few months kind of thing where we're going to start to do this. I hate filling out forms. I'm tired of them. I want them to go away. Today when that experience when you hit a payment flow on an e-commerce website and it just fills stuff out for you, you're like, thank you. And we just all are used to that now, right? But if I have to remember my kid's passport number like one more time, I'm going to lose my mind, and so I think it's 2026. We have all this technology. Like, why is it that I'm still running around, with keep notes of things that I need to cut and paste and put places, or it's in my email somewhere or what have you. So we're working on an expanded autofill system that, with your permission, will be able to do things like, what's your TSA number and what's your passport, and these kinds of things that we all look up. I don't want to do that anymore. And I think that's a very practical thing that I'm like super excited about.
That's a great one. I love it. All right. I always ask the same two questions at the end of the podcast. The first one is, what's the tool that you're using right now? It's an AI podcast, so an AI tool that you're using right now that you think is maybe overlooked or underrated that you would love for people to know about?
Yeah, easy. Gemini Notebook.
Okay.
And I still find that folks know Gemini Notebook best for creating these audio overviews of stuff.
Formerly Notebook LM.
And I think it's great at audio overviews. Use that all day long.
Okay.
But an example, my now sophomore was freshman last year, was doing finals, and he's like, Dad, can you help me with the science final? So I studied this stuff. I totally know it, I'm sure. And so I was on my way home that day, and I got his syllabus. So I don't know any of this stuff.
It's all Greek now.
Like, oh my God, like I'm gonna need time, but I gotta get home. He's gonna be like, we're study hour now. He's got the test in a few days. So I put all of that into Gemini Notebook, and I asked it to make a video overview. Okay. And so this is like, it makes a full-on animated presentation of the material. It took the chapters of the syllabus and it literally walked through each one and was like, okay, we're going to talk about tectonic plates right now. And then it like illustrated them and the different things that happen and all this kind of stuff. And he and I just watched it together. It was like 30 minutes, and like he and I watched it together, and he's a visual learner as well, and I know a lot of people that are, and so for him and for me, this was a lifesaver, and it did that in about 20 minutes on my ride home. I put it in before I got in the car, and then afterwards. So I think that tool for learning, and for getting up to speed quickly on a subject is invaluable. And if you're not using Gemini notebooks, like check it out. It's like really, really cool. That's my favorite one.
It's very good. It's also, I find it is like a kind of a hallucination proof almost, solution, in that you can essentially say, I have this topic I'm trying to learn about.
Right.
I'm going to give you all the sources.
Yeah, so it's grounded on all that.
Yeah, to ground it in. And then I'm going to ask you questions about it. I'm going to have you organize information.
Yeah,
it's very powerful.
And by the way, it also has a mode where, like, this is built in. You don't even have to prompt it. There's a button you can press for this video thing that I talked about, but there's another button you can press for build me a pop quiz. And so like we did that afterwards too. And I was like, okay, make me a quiz. And then it like gave him like a quiz, like a practice test basically.
Yeah.
And like, and it has like explanations for, well, you can ask it like, why is this not right? And it'll like explain it to you. So I found that to be super useful.
Very cool. That's a great one. All right. Last one is, the promise of AI has always been like, oh, eventually it's going to do these things like you described with forms. It's going to sort of automate away some of this stuff we don't want to do, right? And it will give us more time. What I find in 2026 is most, leaders, it's not that they have more time. In fact, they're like stretched even more for time. And so they ask this question of like, right now, how do I get maximum leverage for my time? And so as you think about it, so this is bigger than an AI question. It's more like in the age of AI that we're in, where we have more capabilities at our fingertips. I think that's why people are working more, because they sort of see all the possibilities. What's your best tip for leaders in maximizing their time and getting maximum leverage for their time?
Okay. I mean, there's two.
Okay.
So first is you've really got to look at, this is for me, I really look at where am I spending the empty calories? Okay. So, as an example, on Friday, for whatever reason, everyone wants to send me their like summary of the things for the week, right? And it's always like 5:01 p.m. This like I one time printed out all this stuff for a staff meeting I had. I said, y'all sent me about 100 pages of stuff, and I don't need you to send it to me, but they want to let you know what's going on.
Yeah.
So reading all this is great, and I appreciate it, but it also is a lot of time. And so I call this like, there's chunks of time there where you just have to identify where you can use this technology to help automate, synthesize, etc. Now that you do that, so now you've done that. Now you're using all the tools to your best ability, right? Just as you're all trying to do right now. So here's my other tip that is completely independent of the AI era. Okay. And I call it a calendar cleanse. And anyone who's ever tried to make time on their calendar for their most important things. So first you make a list of your most important things.
Yeah.
These are subtly not the things that are only the most important, but in an organization, they're the things that are important that uniquely require you.
Yeah.
Okay. So they may not be your biggest goals. They may be the things that if you don't help with, things won't happen. Maybe it involves two different teams, or maybe it's super complex for this reason or whatever. So you make that list. So everyone, let's say, it has that list, and you make it as short as you can, but it's always a little longer than you want.
Yep.
Now, anyone who's ever experienced trying to go to their calendar and like, okay, let me see what I can delete to make time for this, that I find to be mostly an exercise in like as a folly, right? Because you go through it and you delete like 2 meetings and you add a bunch more, and then you're like, so we do a calendar cleanse every quarter. We make the list of the most important things, and then I have an admin. So my admin and I, we sit down, and she hates this process, by the way. We delete the entire calendar. Just select all, delete. and then we rebuild the calendar with as much time as is needed for each of the things on the list. So we go to the first one. We're like, what are the things we would need to do here that would make this successful? Okay, I would probably need a weekly on this. I probably need to meet with this person regularly. And we put that all on the calendar in the times that they should be that are optimal for getting this stuff done. And when we're done with that, we have whatever time is left on the calendar, and we go back to everything else we deleted, and we try to put what the most important stuff is in there. And I do that every quarter. And that's the best way to, at the end of the quarter, you're like, okay, I actually spent time on the most important things.
That's the most useful and specific answer I've ever gotten to that.
In painful, like when you do the select all delete, you don't look, just do it, because you start looking at the things, you're like, but I can't.
Well, what about this one? Yeah. Very good. Sameer, thank you for the time. You had a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.